Welcome back to Arielpaints. After posting my Game of Thrones dragon time lapse a few weeks ago, I've gotten a lot of requests for a full tutorial. So here we go. We're going to get into it. It's actually quite easy when you break it down. I'm using a tag one stroke called Magpie, which I love. It's a series of white, gray, and black. And I'm focusing first on the overall shape of my dragon. I'm laying down what you can call scallops or upside down U shapes and making sure that I'm really focusing the toe of that brush with the black on it to make spikes. So you can see the center I've kept lower and it's almost like the start of a mermaid crown. But then I'm making sure I have two taller peaks on either side over my eyebrows. And then as I go into the corner of my mouth, I thin it out so that I have almost an overall triangular shape. And then the little beard at the bottom is also as thin as my mouth or as wide as each corner of my mouth, not larger. This will create an overall arcing shape of the elongated face of the dragon that I want. So now that I have the overall shape of my dragon down, now I'm going to start to layer. And you're going to see me just continue to layer the spikes because I want this to be a very, very spiky dragon. My trick for the eyes, and especially on the job, this is how I get quick coverage, is I turn the brush upside down so that the black is lining the eye. I pull it over the eye and then I make sure to drag the toe of my brush that has that black on it into a sharp peak. It not only works really well, but it's a really easy way to get coverage over the eyes. And then I reinforce the spikiness with having another peak at the top corner of my dragon. It's also important when doing a dragon like this with any one stroke, whether it be green, red, it works in so many colors. I've done a really cute blue one before, is to continually reload your brush because as you go over your paint over and over again, creating more layers and spikes, the black and gray and white are going to start to meld together and look like one color. So the more you go back into your one stroke and redefine those colors, the less correction you're going to have to do later. Now, admittedly, even here you can see I'm laying down color and I'm losing a little bit of the black. So I go in later and I clean that up, which you can always do. But if you're being conscious about reloading your brush really, really well, you're going to have less to clean up later. So now I'm going to continue with the same technique on the inside portion of the cheek. And I'm just making sure to really pull that edge, that toe of the brush out so that I have another layer of spikes. This is a really, really effective and easy way to do a dragon on the job. Every time I do this, people are just shocked because it goes so quickly when you're doing it on another kid. And you can cut out some of the more complicated steps with this particular dragon. I just made this a little bit more detailed. I do a much more simplistic version on the job that's just as effective. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in any place that I want it to blend better. I'm going to grab a sponge and just tap the color in so that I don't have any harsh lines where I don't want harsh lines. And I also want some spikes coming down from the nose. In retrospect, I should have finished filling in underneath my eyes before I did this. It would have been a lot easier, but you'll see I kind of go around it and I do make it work. But I like having this element. I think it helps the nose stand out a bit more rather than just getting lost and looking like a gray blob in the center of the face. So I'm going to continue to layer and fill in. And then I am going to grab a smaller brush and kind of help out with some of those smaller details because I am using a 3/4 inch face painting shop pink tip brush here, one of my favorites, as you guys know. And it works for most of this design, but I want this one to be particularly detailed. So I'm going to actually grab the 1/2 inch angled brush from the face painting shop and do some more detailed work. Under the eyes is always a hard place to get to with a one stroke. So if you just take a sponge and dab the color while it's still wet, and kind of spread it under the eyes, you'll fill in that gap. I have that gap a lot of times when I'm doing one stroke butterflies on little kids because they're squinting and it's hard to get under their eye. And I don't always do it, but if it bothers me, I'll grab a sponge and just kind of push the color up, and it's a lot softer so they don't flinch as much as when you have a brush very close to their eye. So it's a good way to fill in those gaps. For the nose, I'm just going to go right outside my natural nose area, and I've pulled the black a little bit thicker. I really pressed on the toe of that brush so that I have some larger kind of almost like teardrop shapes. And I'm really just filling in the tip of my nose here with color because I'm going to go back in here with my angled brush, my small angled brush, as you can see, and I'm going to define the texture of the nose. So I really just wanted kind of a base down. And then now that I have this smaller brush, I can go in and fix some of those areas that got a little bit muddy with my colors melding and me using that larger brush. To finish off the nose, I'm just adding some nostril marks really right above where my natural nostrils are on my nose, and I'm really just filling it in with some black. Very, very simple, not going too detailed here. Now I'm going to start doing some shading around my dragon so that it has a lot of depth. I have mixed black and brown and made it very, very watery. A lot of times I do this in an extra container, or I'll just mix it on the back of my hand. And I like to put down a little bit of that wet paint, and then I always use my finger and I just kind of pat it out and blur it. For me, that has always worked better than doing anything else. So this is how I create that shadowy look. It can at first end up looking like a little dirty, but by the time you do your line work and you define where the edge of the dragon is and where that shadow is, it's going to all come together. So I'm going to go ahead and do this all around the mask. And I think it adds so much to this overall design, and especially the realistic element of it. If you're trying to make a more realistic dragon, this is a step that you don't want to skip. I decided that the nostrils of my dragon started to get a little bit lost, so I am going in with some stronger black, and I'm just doing an oval shape pointed towards the tip of my nose, or my cupid's bow, to create again that more elongated nose, and I think it looks a little bit better now. So I'm going to take a small round brush. This is a low Cornell brush, probably about a number 2, and I'm going to do a nice thin outline to really define the edge from where that shadowing effect is and where my dragon actually starts. And this really does help kind of cut between the illusion, and it adds a lot. So not something you have to do on the job by any means, but if you have time, do it. I have also went in and I've layered a few different colors here for scales, which adds a really, really cool effect. I did a dark brown, a tan, and now I'm going in with some kind of dirty white to create a highlight on top of the scales I've already done. And just like Game of Thrones, we are approaching the end. So just a few more steps and then we're done. I would love to know if you guys have been watching Game of Thrones from the beginning, if you have any theories of what's going to happen tonight. I have had theories all along this last season of Game of Thrones, and I have been wrong every single time. Apparently, I'm really, really bad at coming up with plots because nothing I thought was going to happen has happened. But I am really enjoying it. I've been watching since the beginning, so was excited to do this dragon. So I hope you guys like it, and I hope you'll be watching along with me tonight because I cannot wait to find out how it ends. So tell me down below if you guys are Game of Thrones fans because I would love to know. So our dragon has to have spikes, horns, all that stuff, right? So I'm using a number 6 low Cornell, and I'm using a number 6 because I can get that nice thick base and then I can pull up to a nice thin peak. I also do horns very often on the job with a filbert brush because I get that nice round bottom and then I can pull up to a very, very thin edge. So whatever brush you want to use is fine. And one trick I have with making the horns look a little bit more realistic is have them go in different directions in certain parts of your dragon face. So they don't always have to be going up and in the exact same direction, and they don't all need to be the same size either. Vary them and make them kind of like quirky, and it'll look better. So once I get all the white down and I have them all over my dragon, as you can see, I'm now going to dry brush in some yellow because our dragon does not polish his horns and and spikes. You know, our dragon is like rough and has been around the block. So I first dry brushed some yellow, and now I'm going in with a little bit of brown, and I'm just kind of tapping it on with the brush, and then I'm dabbing it off with my finger, and that gives a more natural, kind of dirty, dry brushed, natural horn look rather than like a bright white, unnatural look for our dragon. I decided at the end that I actually wanted to do eyes for the dragon, so I am taking a neon orange and a filbert brush, and I'm just doing a like a pupil over my eye and trying to keep my eye closed so I let it dry, but that's impossible because I am the most impatient person in the world. And then I'm gonna try to repeat it on this side so that they match up pretty well, and I think I did an okay job for doing it on myself. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of black on the inside to create the look of the eye. And what I'm really going for here is like a straight line with almost a dot in the middle so that it looks like that dragon eye. And of course, if you're doing this on someone else, you can tell them just to keep their eyes closed until you're all done. I was trying to paint myself, so had to keep my eyes open. So I tried to fan myself a little bit here to get them to dry. If you want them to be brighter also, then just take a Q-tip and clean off the gray and black first and then put the orange down. I actually quite liked the way they looked pretty subtle. I thought it looked kind of creepy, but if you want them to be super, super bright, do that first and you'll get a brighter look. So while my eyes hopefully dry, I'm going to go ahead and take a very small number one brush, and I'm going to give all of my horns and spikes a very, very thin outline. I wanted the lips to have a little bit more texture, so I went ahead and double loaded a filbert brush, and I'm just going to swipe that over my bottom and top lip. I think it really helped define it and give it some interest. And then I'm going to do kind of another layer of it where my lip stops, and that's going to make the mouth of my dragon just a little bit larger. So we're almost done. I'm going to define just a few details that I feel like got lost. You can see the spikes on the side of the nose got a little lost, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a couple dots on my eyes, and then I am going to do some shadows for the larger spikes and horns of the dragon. This is one of those steps that is very, very simple, but I think it really goes a long way. I am using the same technique I used before. I am taking some very, very watery brown and black mixed together, and I'm just kind of drawing in where I think that shadow should be, and then I'm dabbing the paint off with my finger, and that will create the kind of ghost-like shadow effect because you do not want it to be too strong. If it's too dark or too strong, it can kind of start looking cartoony, and that's the opposite of what we're doing here. We're doing a relatively realistic dragon. So I'm going to go ahead and add some to the side as well, and then our dragon is going to be all done. And here it is, my realistic Game of Thrones inspired dragon. I hope you guys like this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook for more designs and tips and tricks. If you guys are going to Fabaic next week, Fabaic 2019, I will be there. Please come find me. I would love to meet all of you. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.